Okay, so we're talking about volume of prisms, and we're going to start with a general formula. I want you to write it up here. And this is a general formula for all prisms. V equals capital B times H, lowercase h. Okay, write that down. This is called the general formula for the volume of prisms. Okay, let me write that down. For any prism, to find the volume, this is the general formula. General meaning it works for any prism. Okay, general formula for the volume of prisms. Okay, so let's go back to what we saw in the video. So to find the volume of any prism, here we have a triangular prism, right? You find the area of the base. In this case, it's a triangle. So you find the area of the base, I'm sorry. And then you multiply it times the height. So if I have this particular prism, I have to calculate this area. That's the capital B. And then multiply it by this length, which is the height. And that would be the volume. That's how much this would hold. When we're finding volume, we're figuring out how much the capacity, how much it will hold. So we're going to label this. So everybody write this down. This capital B stands for the base area. And that depends on our shape. It could be a triangle, it could be a rectangle, it could be a hexagon, an octagon, whatever our shape is. And this is the height of the prism. Okay, so this is our general formula. It works for all prisms. And we're going to get specific for rectangular and triangular prisms right now, okay? So let's go ahead and move on. So let's look at this one. So it says that volume is a three-dimensional shape. So that's what we're working with. Here we go. So volume the volume of a three-dimensional shape is the measure of the space occupied by it in three dimensions. Okay. So if we want to find the volume of this prism, we basically find the area of the base. Let me see if I can color it. I'm going to call the base this bottom, right? And this is a rectangle. Do you remember the formula for the area of a rectangle? Length times width. So to find the area of this rectangular prism, you would find the area of the base, it's length times width. So you would basically multiply 4 times 3, and then multiply it times the height, which is 2. And that's what they're illustrating here. You multiply 4 times 3, that's going to give us 12. And then you multiply the 12 times 2, which is the height. That would basically tell us it's 2 layers. And that would be 24. And the answer would be 24 cubic meters, because we have 24 cubes. Okay. So now if we're looking for finding the volume of a rectangular prism, we just have a general formula or a specific formula for that. And that's just length times width times height. So that means all we really have to do to find the volume is multiply the 3 dimensions, the 3 measurements that we're given. Okay. So let's do that. Let's do 1, 2, and 3. We're going to find the volume of these 3 rectangular prisms. Okay? So here we go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write that formula. Volume is length times width times height. Okay, go ahead and write those down. Length times width times height. And I'm going to say it really won't matter, but I'm kind of going to view it this way. I'm going to say this is my base, that rectangle there. So basically we would say, okay, I need a length. Let's say it's 4. I need a width. Let's say that's 3 meters. Oops. That should be W, by the way. And we need the height. I'm going to say this is the height. So it's 7. So a formula is just like following a recipe. You put the ingredients and mix them up the way they tell you, and you'll get the right result. Okay, so I'm going to replace L with what number? 4. 4 meters. I got an M there. I'm going to replace the W with 3 meters. And then I'm going to replace the H with 7 meters. Okay. So I've got 4 times 3 times 7. Let's pause for a minute. So using the associative property, I could rearrange stuff. I have 4 meters times 3 meters times 7 meters. I can separate the 4, the 3, and the 7, the coefficients, right? Because I want to multiply those. And the meters times the meters times the meters. So let's just do that. Okay? Let's multiply on your calculators 4 times 3 times 7. Let's see what we get. What are we going to get? 84. Now, what's a shorter way of saying meters times meters times meters? Yeah. Meters cubed, or cubic meters. So there is a mathematical algebra way of ending up with the right units. Cubic meters. Okay? So that's 84 cubic meters. Anybody know how long a meter is? We use them in other countries. Like, if I go to Mexico, they measure things in meters. It's a little more than a yard. So remember my arm span? It's about that much longer. You add that much more or less about a foot more, to my arm span. That's 1 meter. So imagine a cube where each side is that big, and then imagine 84 of those cubes. That would be the size that we're talking about here. Now, you see this whole units. This is called unit analysis, where I did the multiplying meters times meters. We're not going to do it each time. We just have to recognize that every time we write our volume, like we saw in the video, it has to be cubic units. It's 3 dimensions, so it's cubics. Okay? All right. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2. I'm going to write down the formula, length times width times height. Let's all agree that the base area, or the base rectangle, is this one, the one I'm shading in, the one in the front. So we have our front view of the video of our rectangle. That's going to give us the length and the width. So let's figure out which one is our length and which one is our width. Let's make 3 the length. And this is going to be our width. That makes this right there the height. So we got 3 times 2 times 2.7. I'm not going to include the units this time. 3 times 2 times 2.7. Okay, multiply those 3 numbers. 16.2. And now what are the units for this? Cubic feet. Okay. So let's do the last one. I want you to use, this is going to be the base, the bottom there. Use those units for the base. So I'd like you to figure out the volume of this rectangular prism for number 3. Let's do that right now. Hopefully this is what you got. 240 cubic inches. 240 cubic inches. Okay. So finding the volume of rectangular prisms is the easiest thing possible because all we're doing is multiplying. Okay. Next easiest are triangular prisms. Are you guys ready for those? I'll give you a minute. Okay. So while we're catching up, the difference between a triangular prism and a rectangular prism is triangles are always half the size of rectangles, of a rectangle with the same dimensions. So it's half the size. So the formula for the base area is going to reflect that. Okay, you guys ready? Flip the page, and at the top, everybody write down that general formula again. Volume equals base area height.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
So this is the general formula, but what if we have a triangle? It's going to look like this. Volume equals the area of a triangle, which is 1/2 base times height. So for a triangle, it's this. 1/2 base times height. That's the base area. And now we have a bit of a problem. We're using h here, right? So it's going to be confusing if we use h again. So usually what we do is we change the height of the prism to just a length. Call it L. And we end up with this formula. 1/2 base times height times length. 1/2 base times height times length. So what that's going to mean for us is it's going to be everything we just did, multiplying our 3 dimensions they give us. So if you notice, they give us 3 dimensions. In addition to that, we have to multiply it by 1/2. That's all. We're adding the 1/2 because it's a triangle and it's half of that equivalent rectangle. So let's practice. Here is the formula. Volume equals 1/2 base times height of the triangle times the length. So let's look at our triangle. Here it is. This is our triangle. So we have these 2 numbers. I want you to get in the habit of picking these correctly. Think about which one is the base And which one is the height? So number 11, is that going to be our base or our height? You remember when you worked on this in 6th grade? I think that's 6th grade. Whenever you have that length here that's going on the edge, that's a base on a triangle. So this is going to be the base. Anytime you have the part that forms a right angle, as you can see, I covered it up a little bit, but that forms a right angle. This is going to be the height. And so that's going to be our length. So let's fill in our numbers. Now we're going to do this on a calculator. So what's a better number to use instead of 1/2 for 1/2? 0.5. So we're thinking about our calculator right now. Times our base, which is 11, times the height, which is 4, times the height, or length, I should say, which is 6. So this is what we're multiplying. 0.5 times 11 times 4 times 6. Let's see what answer we get. So go ahead and multiply those. What do we get? $210? I'm not getting the same thing. Yeah, 132. 132. And what are the units? It's a volume. Cubic yards, because you're still multiplying yards times yards times yards. So that would be cubic yards. Okay. All right. So 132 cubic yards. Let's do the next one. Here's my triangle. This is the triangle right there. And the volume is 1/2 base times height times length. Let's see here. Instead of 1/2, I do 0.5. Which number represents the base? 7. Correct. That means 5 is the height of the triangle. And then this is our length, which is 12. So this is what we're multiplying. 0.5 times 7 times 5 times 12. These are multiplication, that's a decimal. So 0.5 times 7 times 5 times 12. $210. And what are the units here? Inches, square inches, cubic inches. Cubic inches. Just remember, on a volume, it's always cubic. On an area, it's always square. And then length measurements are always in singles or linears. Okay, let's do the last one. I don't even think we need the formula. 0.5 times, I'll use the X now. This is our base triangle right here. This is kind of a tricky one. Which is the base, which is the height? 14, I see the base is 14, only because it goes along the bottom. But on a right triangle, it won't matter, especially. So 14 times, what is our other number? 6 times 20. Okay. So let's multiply those. And what do we get? 840 cubic feet. 840 cubic feet. And that's, if you're pouring cement, that would be a lot of cement. By the way, in the construction field, they use volume a lot, along with all kinds of other measurements. All right. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to find the missing length, and they're going to give us a volume. They're going to tell us what the volume is. We just have to find one of the three dimensions that's missing. So you see here, we don't know one of them. It's x. So let's go ahead and do that. So first off, I'm going to look at my solid. It's a rectangular prism. I'm going to say that's the base. So I'm going to write down the formula. Volume is length times width times height. Okay. So I'm going to say this is the height. Okay, this would be the length maybe, and this would be the height, the width rather. So 10, 7, and x. So let's replace everything we know. Do we know the volume? Yes, we sure do. It's 840. We also know the length. It's 10. We also know the width. It's 7. We don't know the height. I'll just put h. You see what I did? I put in every number I know, leaving out h because, well, leaving out the one I don't know, and I used h for that. Let's simplify this. Multiply the 10 times 7. So that's 840 equals 70 h. Well, now it's just an equation where I could divide out 70. We always go back to this where we're solving some sort of equation. So the height is going to be 840 divided by 70, 12. Now, this isn't a volume, guys. So if I say cubic inches, I'd be wrong. It's not an area. It's just inches. It's just some length. Literally a length. So those are in linear units. Okay, let's do the last one. What kind of prism is this one? It's triangular, so we got to use that formula. So here's my triangle. Okay, so I'm going to plug in everything I know into this formula. Volume equals 1/2 base, height, length. So I'm going to say the length is a part I don't know. There it is. It looks like the length. I'll say this is the base. This is the height. Do I know the volume? 462. I sure do. 462 cubic yards. So let's plug in everything we know. We know the volume. 462. We know 1/2, 0.5. We know the base, 11. We know the height. The height is 6. What we don't know is x. I'm going to call it L. And there we go. We have to simplify this part. 0.5 times 11 times 6. So multiply 0.5 times 11 times 6. How much is that? What's 0.5 times 11 times 6? 33. L. So now we just have to divide out 33. Get that. And that will tell us what the length is. What's 462 divided by 33? And this time it's 14 yards. Okay. So that length is 14 yards. So on today's Delta, I'm sorry, not Delta, it's IXL. We're going to be finding mainly volume. There's going to be a couple questions like that. Okay. Any questions? So open up your Chromebooks and let's go to IXL.